Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another coffee morning with the Pumping Marvellous team. And today we are joined by a familiar face, Ryan, who provides our personal training sessions on Wellness Wednesdays. And we thought it would be nice for you to get to know Ryan a bit more and his background, and he used to be a nurse and how he got into personal training, and just get to know the full Ryan rather than just doing his sessions every week. So over to you, Ryan. How did you start your journey into nursing and then transitioning from nursing into becoming a personal trainer?
Right then, well, it's a fairly strange story, is mine, I suppose, really, where I've gone. But yeah, it'd be nice to share it, because I suppose from leaving school, I went into the sixth form, which I found was appalling. Didn't like it. Didn't want to stay there. So I kind of moved on from that, and I actually went into engineering as my first job, which is very bizarre. And I trained as an electrical engineer, so I went from quite a bit of a change as I went through it all. But when I was doing engineering, I knew it wasn't me, and I just happened to go to some sort of like careers opening day type thing, and they had like a little program. They're saying like, oh, put in all these things, it'll give you an ideas of what you might like to do. And nursing was one of the options on there. And I thought, do you know what? I never thought about nursing, going into a typical engineering man role and not thinking about that stuff. Kind of totally changed my thoughts, and I thought, you know, I really fancy that. So I applied to join part of the Nursing 2000 program. I don't know if I should say that. That shows you how long ago it was. Sort of like in it was called Nursing 2000, but it was like 99 when I started, somewhere around that there. I had to wait a few months for the intake, so I just did a little bit of a college course just to pass time to it, which I didn't even finish because the course started before that would. But they said they want you doing something, so oh, fair enough. And then I went into that, so I became I went into general adult nursing. But whilst being a student nurse, my main placements were respiratory was my first placement, but then the chronic care unit was my second placement. So that is what pushed me to be more involved in that sort of elements of care, really, because that's where I spent my time. Which was really, really, really enjoyable. And I think what it was with nursing for me was I preferred the time when I was a student nurse, as I really liked all that sort of patient-centered care and the time to do that. And I'm very much about working with people. I think that's what I discovered about myself during that time, is that I like to work with people. Sort of, you don't have to be one-on-one, but in groups, but like actually have time to build a rapport with them and get somewhere. And sometimes I found, particularly on hospital wards, that it was very much rounds, doctors. It felt like it was almost a bit of a conveyor belt of action, and sometimes you didn't get to sit and have them. Whereas whilst being a student, you had that time to sort of sit there and get to know them, because you were, well, what they like to call it supernumeracy back then, which meant you wasn't on the rota. It's a fancy way of saying you're not on the shifts. But it meant, you could actually spend some time, and I sort of loved all that. And then I made a little bit of a U-turn there. Well, no, it's not really a U-turn, a bit of a change, I suppose. And I came across a housing association, and I went into housing before I went into personal training. But with the housing association, they had a lot of supported housing, and it was a support worker that brought me in. And I went in there as a support worker, this just shows you as well, this is where nurses are underappreciated, by the way. My starting pay as a support worker, which needed 0 qualifications, to be fair, it needed to show you that you had the skills, although it helped that I had the background, was starting me on $3,000 a year more than what I was on from the nursing one after doing 3 years worth of training. And that just shows you how underappreciated it can be sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. Nurses are so underappreciated for what nurses do. It's such a shame. I mean, like you say, they often do it for the passion for the job, and clearly not for the monetary rewards, because they are really underpaid and undervalued.
Exactly, and that's why I think this whole thank you to the NHS stuff that's been going on is so important. Because it's like, yeah, they do a lot, and they don't always get paid the best, and they're definitely doing it for the right reasons. If it's gone into nursing thinking like, I'm going to make myself minted and have a really fancy life in a big house, because you're not going to do that through that. You might be able to get higher up the ranks and get respectable sort of earnings, but it's never going to be enough. And it's like, yeah, we need to appreciate the fact that they're doing it because they actually care about everybody else. And that's the sort of side of me that always came through, that I like working with the people. I like to help people, and that's where my job satisfaction comes in. So I did housing for a few years. I was a sport worker for a while. Then I managed their homeless services for them for quite a few years, which was a good time, and kind of got so far to where it got a little bit monotonous. I mean, I got a bit bored of it. But I did have a lovely staff team that I used to manage, and they were really hard to leave because I was like, I'm so fond of these people, and it was mutual. It was mutual respect. We had a lovely relationship, and it was quite a hard place to leave. But I knew I needed something different, and then sort of looking through it, the main sort of turning point. Actually, I'm going to miss a step here if I'm not careful. The main turning point was sorting out my own health, and I think that's probably what's good for people to know, is that I didn't come from being, the high school student that was in all the sports team, running around. Yes, I go to the gym every time. You know what? I didn't like sports as a kid. I liked rugby. Okay, one thing was my rugby league. I'm Yorkshire, obviously, so rugby league up north was the only thing that I kind of really had any passion about, and that's probably through my dad. My dad loved it, and he started taking me from being about 10. So I really got into that. So I played with that with school, and I had a chance to sort of go and play with some of the amateur clubs, but to be fair, I started my engineering apprenticeship, so that kind of died off pretty quickly because I couldn't train, when they needed me. Because the evenings when you train, you were at college, and you couldn't have that. So that was my only really sports interest, and because of that, exercise and active levels just went. I hardly did anything for years. Well, yeah, for a long, long time. And it wasn't really until I got just into my 30s when I got that sort of bit of a wake-up call, really, which I suppose a lot of people who were, part of this group will have had wake-up calls, being part of the heart failure awareness. It's a big stack, kick in the backside to need to change something, isn't it? And I got a similar one. I mean, I wasn't ill, but the chances of being ill were there because one of the schemes, and I know I was talking to Kate just before about it, part of being occupational therapy and stuff, is like, there was a team linked to Kirklees Council at the time because I was working over in Huddersfield. They did a better health at work scheme, and it was short-lived, and then I'd lost the funding, which was a shame because it was brilliant, and especially for me because it completely changed my aspects of my career progression. And they did a health checkup, and in this health checkup, and this again, just, I know it's a bit of a flip-flop there, but it shows you where you don't always realise what's always going on, and now weight sometimes creeps up on you, and now your unhealthy habits creep on you, might even notice it. And it sounds even daft when I've been in a career like nursing where I should have this knowledge to my head, but to be fair, that's not always there in that field either, because a lot of that's about treating, the problem and working on the medical side of things. It's not always, they know the standard advice to give out, but whether they're fully trained on that is different. I know this new obesity strategy is trying to affect that and change that and make GPs and other healthcare professionals have more knowledge on putting people on the right path of eating. But, even nowadays, I work with a lot of people who come from, I work with a couple of doctors, I work with nurses, and, a lot of them with similar issue where you think they'd expect more awareness, but it's not the case. Okay, it's not the case. And when I joined the Better Health and Work scheme, and I said, oh yeah, I'll put my team through that, they're brilliant. And I said, I'll go first. And she went, oh, right, you're going to do it. But I think she's a bit surprised. I think most people's attitudes in company was, oh yes, we'll send our staff to that, and that's fine, but not do it themselves. I went, well, how am I going to put them through it? I'll put me through it and lead by it from the start.
Yeah.
But sadly, it wasn't the most happiest experience, as I found out that my weight level was classed as overweight. Wasn't quite obese, but it was overweight. So if you see me now, and you'll probably see me when I'm doing exercises, you'll see I'm not overweight at all anymore. But I was literally about 4, maybe even 5 stone heavier than what I am now. If that makes sense in that language. And I usually use kilograms, but stone is more common.
Yes, I kilograms. I have no idea. Stone.
Yeah, people go, I don't know what that means. Does that mean you're just a little bit chunky? I don't know. I was a lot chunky, I can tell you that much. So yeah, I had all this excessive weight that I'd not really seen sneak up on me. And they also said, obviously the waist measurement thing was standard stuff like that, and that was over the area. So that means if your waist is over that size, you're a good indication of heart disease and stuff. Because any fat you carry around your abdomen is the visceral fat, and that's the one that's going to surround your organs. So that's the one that's causing a lot of damage, and it's a great predictor of internal organ health, and mine just heart disease. So that was in there. The blood pressure was up, not exceeding. I wouldn't have called it hypertensive, but I would say it was a high normal maybe. Blood sugar at that point was fine, which I don't know how. Look at what I was eating. How my blood sugar was fine is beyond me. Maybe I was just lucky, or maybe it hadn't kicked in yet. But my cholesterol level was high, and that really surprised me. And I wasn't expecting that at sort of that early age. And I mean, obviously, I already had children at that age. I had 2 children at that age, and it kind of woke me up. And then I think sometimes I've mentioned on the sessions, and I've talked about motivation. I'm like, sometimes you've got to dig deep and think about what really motivates you, because that's what keeps you going. And when I look into mine, and that point there, it was, I've got 2 children that still need to grow up. I've got 3 now. One came along afterwards, but 2 children that need to grow up, and now 3 children to add to that equation. That until they're fully grown adults, they still depend on me, and I brought them into this world, and I need to be there for them. And that kind of scared me a little bit, really, because I thought, I don't want to risk going away. And then when I mentioned it, I was talking to my dad about it, and he's like, oh, well, I'm on statins. I'm like, how do I not know this? So there's other warning signs there that this could actually, ruin the family as well. And I'm putting all these big problems in the way. Although I would say, looking down that family line, it's less genetic, more hereditary behaviors of the way we eat and the way we move, because there was heart disease in the family, but I look at what they ate and I'm like, it was pretty obvious there was going to be heart disease in the family. You're looking at that type of food. But sort of pulling through that, and that was like a big wake-up call, and then I started trying to learn what I need to do. So first time I did it not very educated, really. I just went for it the best way. I knew I needed to cut down on my saturated fats and stuff, and I tried really hard, and I did lose quite a bit of weight at the beginning, and probably went a little bit skinny and lost it. And then I kind of slipped into the routine and started putting it back on. And I'm like, oh, I need to find out how to do this properly. And then I kind of
I was going to say, did you find, obviously, a lot of people when they start trying to lose weight, they do yo-yo a bit, and they do. It's hard to maintain it. And did you find that when you was losing weight?
Absolutely, absolutely, all over the place. And I think it didn't help that, again, I wasn't fully educated on how to do that. I had bits of advice, bits of things, and bits of stuff that I was following, but that's all I had. So the second time around, I'm like, I want to make a real difference out of this. I don't want to be like that. So I really started sort of self-learning, really, and self-teaching myself what I need to do, and did it on a much better spectrum. And then I maintained it. And then the second time around as well, I incorporated more exercise into it. Well, the first time I really didn't. It was more about just through food, just through nutrition, trying to change it. So this time I combined them both, and I realized how good this was. And as I learned more, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the science behind it, because I'm one of those that you do something and you're like, I need to know everything about this now. So I go into massive research mode, and I try to find everything out that I possibly can. And that made me think, well, why don't I do more of this? Why don't I actually go on a course and learn it? And I thought, I'm feeling really good. I'm feeling so much better than I ever did before. I can move better, I'm faster and fitter. I'm probably right now I'm the fittest I've ever been in my life, and I'm not to say out too loud, but I'm 42 now, and I'll be 43 this year, well, in October, not long. And at 43, and I'm like, if I looked at myself at 20, I'd probably be able to kick his backside, he'd be nowhere near my fitness levels. And that to me was quite impressive. It said it doesn't matter that you're getting older. You don't have to, you don't stop there. Then you can still make improvements. And that was a big testament to that, really. So, I went and sort of did the course, and I did it really on both things of like, yes, I fancy this as a career, but also I fancy knowing everything about it myself. So I won't lose either way. And if I decide that it's not the job for me, but the more I did it, and down the line, when I was probably 2 years into my training, because I didn't just train for the normal qualification, I trained into the level 4 stuff, so I could get the advanced things and work with people, with from people who could be referred from GP, so I could work with people with like diabetes, heart disease, and blood pressure, strokes, osteoporosis, mental health, loads of things in that list. And then plus added on like working with like lower back pain and pregnancy, pre and postnatal. So I put a lot of it together, because if I want to know something, again, I want to know everything. So I need the full shebang. So I worked through that, and then sort of found myself and took that big step to leave a very secure job, in a management position, to take that big step to go back to almost bottom rung and join a gym and learn the ropes. learn the ropes, and then build up from there. And then I sort of did quite well with that. I found that I picked up clients quite quickly, which hopefully was down to me being just friendly and smiling at the folk and giving them what they wanted. And I was quite surprised. I did really well at that gym, and that was my sort of baseline. And then I decided, well, I think it's time to have my own space. So then, I rented a studio space, and started doing that up, which was really good until they had to change the building and decided that this bit was being sold off. So I had to move again. But now I'm in probably a better place than what I was then again. And still in Leeds now for my studio. And I kept it there because obviously the gym I worked in was in Leeds, and I built up a big client base there that I didn't want to lose, because I've had people that have been with me from my early days of doing this. I'd probably say my longest client has still been with me like nearly 4 years. They just stay. It's not that they've not hit their goals. It's that they still want to train with me at least one, even if they move down to once a week, because they enjoy that impact. And the goals change, and that's another important thing. It's like if we're talking about training, it's not about just the initial goal. It's about what's next. Then what's next?
It's the maintenance, isn't it? It's the maintenance of keeping healthy. I mean, touching on what you said about you being the healthiest you've ever been, I'm sure Rich in the group won't mind me mentioning, he's also a few times he's said since his heart failure diagnosis, it was a wake-up call. And he's running, he's got an injury at the minute, but he's running half marathons. He is the fittest he's ever been. Heart failure in a way for him was a wake-up call that he needed. Otherwise, he would have ended up far unhealthier than he is. And I think sometimes people do need that wake-up call, and they also need to know the wake-up call isn't the end, it's the start, and you can improve things.
No, I totally agree. And I think it's amazing. I mean, I saw some of the stuff on Facebook about about Richard and some of the others, and I was like, this is just fantastic. Even down to watching people doing the challenge, and I can't remember all the names, but the lady doing the stairs every day to get upstairs. That's just incredible stuff to see, and I really so quite passionate about that, and it really fills me with a sense of pride of people, and I love to see it, and I love people just trying what they can. And I think what you'd find is we're working with me, and probably, I mean, you only get snippets now, but people with me will realize that I'm more about the person, and I'm more about dealing with the overall person, and it's not just about somebody comes in and say, "Oh, I want to lose weight." I'm like, "Okay, do you want to lose weight?" Yeah. Let me talk a few more questions, and it depends on what they come up with, whether I actually work with them or not, because they might not be the right people. I don't work with the guys who come in and just go like, "Right, I'm here, I just want to look massive," and I'm like, "Yeah, but why? Why not? Because that's how I should look." And it's like it's all a bit aesthetic and a bit pointless. Somebody comes to me and says, "Look, I want to get healthier. I need to feel fitter. I feel tired. I'm tired in the morning. I'm not happy with my body shape because I've got carrying too much weight, and I don't feel well." And I think I'm like, okay, let's talk about this then. Let's go further. And the best thing about that is that you'll treat, and the way I like to work is like treat the inside out. Let's fix the health on the inside. Let's get you fit. Let's get you strong. Let's get you healthy. Let's get your body working like it should be. And the outside will take care of itself, and you'll see that, and you'll feel, which is the most important part, a million times better. And there's nothing better than how you feel, because I know there's a lot of things you see in the media, and there's a lot of things promoting like body confidence and stuff, and they'll have people of all different shapes and sizes, which I think is a really, really good thing. There's nothing wrong with promoting body confidence, and people should be happy where they are, but there should also be a thing about promoting looking after your health, because okay, it might be body confidence, don't be afraid that you're really overweight and you've got it, and don't be embarrassed by that, but also don't accept that as just I should carry on this normal lifestyle that's making me this big, because let's face it, 9 out of 10 times what's making that big is going to be causing a lot of other damage on the inside, and it's about that for me. It's like, never be, don't be ashamed of you look. I'd be happy we are, be you, but let's fix the other stuff, and then naturally you'll change shape anyway, which is going to help you, because when you look at fitness and weight loss, which always seems to become one of the biggest factors that people come from, or need to lose weight, it's like, well, let's take that away from the scales a little bit. Let's not worry too much about them. We'll take initial weight, and then we'll take some later on, so we can see what's happening there. Because really, I prefer your weight, so I can use it for planning, your calories, your nutritional intake. I can do it for planning your exercise programs. I can do it so I can test your fitness levels, and you can base it on your height and your weight and stuff, and your gender. So it just helps with things like that. And I'm like, well, don't focus on weight loss, because it's fat loss that we want. because it's that stuff that's causing the damage. And if we make you fitter and stronger and build you a little bit of muscle at the same time, and by building muscle, it doesn't mean you have to be humongous. I know a lot of women will be like, oh, yeah, but I don't want to be going down these big muscles up here. And that's fine. You're going to struggle because you haven't got testosterone, well, yeah, but it's not a lot going on. Unless you start injecting it or taking it in other ways, which is what the female bodybuilders, a lot of them will do, the really big ones, and the male ones, to be fair, let's face it. It's like, just what comes naturally, because, you'll generate more muscle fibers, your muscles will become stronger, they'll work better, and your metabolic rate, which is how much you process your calories from doing nothing, will go up. So whatever you're eating, most of it will get used up rather than actually being needed. Because one thing to remember about muscling, which is a beautiful thing about it, is it's really hungry. So the more muscle you have, the easier it is to keep the fat off. So it's having that lovely balance of working it all together, and just body recomposition really is much more important. But just reduce that fat and look after your inner health and watch the rest of it take off.
Yeah, I think it's key as well to not compare yourself to other people. So when you see other people losing weight or doing really well on diets, that's not a comparison to your metabolism or how you can lose. You have to just concentrate on yourself, and don't compare yourself to what anyone else is doing, how far someone else can run. It's very much a focus on improving your own health and within your own limits of what you can achieve. But the world is quite fickle in comparisons, and everybody does tend to compare, which they really shouldn't. It's just be. What
am I looking on Instagram? Did my transformation get more likes than theirs? It's nonsense. Okay, and you're right. I'm glad you mentioned that, because comparisons is one of those things that always winds me up a little bit, because people are saying, oh yeah, but so and so's doing so. It doesn't matter. Well, how are they? They're not you, are they? Unless you clone you, there's not. I mean, the clothes you can probably get is an identical twin, and even then, you're still not exactly the same. There's differences, So unless you've got a Dolly the Sheep version of you, a little clone, then you've got nobody to compare with apart from yourself. And if you're going to compare with you. Like, I always think of it in that sense. I promote it a lot in groups, and I talk. I say, look, think about you now. Think about you maybe 3 months ago. Which version is it now? This is 3 months ago. This is you. How do you feel? Are you up here? Are you better? You feel like I'm better than that person? I'm fitter. I like myself more. I'm more confident. I'm healthier. Everything feels great. That's a good thing to be. Okay, I'm going to keep moving so I can keep going that way. Or is it that you come across and you think, actually, that was a better version of me? So you don't go sulk of it. You go, well, why was that a better version of me? What was different? And then you look back over your 3 months and think, what did I do differently that time to what I did before then? And you'll be like that. And it'll still not stand out. It might be that, I suppose, let's use lockdown. Lockdown's a great example. Before lockdown, I felt like I was here, but after lockdown, I'm here now, okay? Sometimes it's vice versa, to be fair, with lockdown. It can be either way. But it might be that before lockdown, all that freedom, I was active nearly every day. And because I was active, I used to eat better, because a lot of people do like to eat better when they're active. It usually encourages you to eat more healthy food. Since lockdown, though, I've only gone out once or twice a week, when I went out more often. And I've got bored in the evening because I can't go out very often. So I've started having like more snacks, like I might have biscuits in the evening, or a bit of cake or something, or I might have a drink, an alcoholic drink or something. And it's things like that creep in. Oh, food's still hard to get all the, but takeaways now open. I can't go out to eat, but I will get a takeaway. So takeaways have sneaked in. This is the reason why this version doesn't feel as good, and there are obvious things to see. And then it's like, okay, well, what do I do now then? It's like, well, what are the me still doing? All of them? Okay, well, pick one of them and start there, and cut a bit out. Okay, slowly filter it out, get it down to that level that you're happy with again, and then tackle the next one. It doesn't matter. It might take you a little bit longer to get there. It's getting there and keeping it. And then remember what it is that caused you pitfall before. And then you can go into that with a better plan, thinking, I don't want to do that again, because look what work it put on for me. Let's remember.
And like you say, try and do it and tackle it in little pieces. Don't try and tackle the whole thing at once, because it will be such a shock to the system to suddenly completely change your eating habits, completely try and get more physically active from doing nothing to doing something huge. It's going to be a shock, and I'm sure it probably is more likely to work out in the long term if you do things slowly. So have you got any top substitutes? So we touched on your cholesterol was high, and cholesterol is one of those things that people can't really see, and I don't think a lot of people really know what causes high cholesterol, what things we need to avoid. What 3 things just cholesterol based would you try and swap out in your diet to try and lower things like the hidden cholesterol levels?
Yeah, well, to be fair, because I do a lot of work with the diabetes prevention as well. There's quite a lot of strong links there, so I often talk about fats quite often, because what's usually not seen as much, I mean, we know that fats, okay, let's talk fats. So we've got fats, and we talk about unsaturated fats, and we talk about saturated fats, okay? And if anybody's heard much on them before, they'll know that the saturated fats are usually the hardest ones, okay? They're the ones that causes the problems, okay? Because the way they impact our liver, they help raise the wrong type of cholesterol, okay? So they raise our LDLs up. And that's what it's seen as, okay? And that's been the sort of biggest thing that's been to prove that we need to reduce our cholesterol. First thing is we need to bring down those saturated fats. And then we need to make sure we've got a good supply of the unsaturated fats, because they actually do the opposite thing, if you like, really. A way I sometimes like to try and sort of simplify it and make it make more sense, because sometimes it's like it can feel a bit complicated on what do we mean by this and what do we mean by that. Is sometimes I like to get handy and draw on a board, but I'm gonna describe this for you. But when I look at saturated fats, rather than thinking about it just raising the cholesterol and going through the liver, sometimes it's easier just to think about it depositing itself in our arteries. I mean, we know it's the cholesterol that goes and deposits and puts the plaque in there and furs up the arteries and stuff. But just thinking about the more saturated fat we have, the more of the stuff, the cholesterol's going to go around and deposit itself in our arteries, blocking it up. And if you had a nice little narrow artery like that, you might put a little lump in there, so like that might be a lump of it there, and then it's got only a tiny bit of space to get through. So your blood flow is really restricted. And then obviously if it gets completely blocked, well, that's where you could end up with your heart attacks, or where you could end up with, other problems around the body, or bits could break off and float up to your brain and, cause things like stroke. So it can be quite risky, and, we'll get things like angina, and, blood pressure will be affected. There's all sorts going on there. But that complete blockage, as we know, if it goes to your heart, that's very painful, isn't it? And that's where they get the myocardial infarctions from. And when you break that down, that's all that word means, isn't it? Myocardium is the tissue around your heart, and infarction is a death off. So an MI is a death off that tissue because it can't get the oxygen through from the blood supply. It's not coming anymore. So that feels, quite, we don't want any of that going on. And we really don't. At the same time, that same cholesterol stuff that's clogging up your arteries and doing that same thing is actually reducing the sensitivity of your muscles towards insulin. So it actually affects diabetes as well. And if we thought about diabetes a little bit, what insulin does in the role of diabetes is insulin comes in to allow, it doesn't get rid of sugar in your blood. It's not like a little Pac-Man that goes around and goes gobble, 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 eats it all up. It basically, in a way, unlocks your muscles and allows the glucose or the sugar from your blood to go into your muscles to be stored as energy. But it's insulin that allows that to happen. So that's why we need it in there. So if your muscles become more resistant to insulin, they won't do that, and the sugar won't get out. So you can see there's a couple of issues going on already, Kate, because first of all, it's blocking it up, so you're getting blocked blood flow, so that's causing problems around your body with your blood flow. You're not getting oxygen and nutrients delivered all the way around it, and you also can't get your blood sugar out of your system because it's blocking up that action. And the more sugar we have in our system, or the more glucose, the more risk of heart disease we have again, because that'll harden up your arteries and stuff, and make it even more difficult. So first part of call is let's reduce saturated fat, okay? Saturated fat, when we're thinking about it, is predominantly animals, okay? Apart from the fish. Fish swims away and goes to the good side. We like fish, okay? But animal fat, so, maybe it's from chicken, cows, pigs, lamb, you can go on all day. That's the stuff that you had to work on reducing down. But in a simpler fashion, just changing the way you cook it can make the biggest difference. So rather than saying, no, well, let's not eat these meats, because we want those meats, we want the protein, we want the iron and the other great stuff we get from the meat. But like chicken, the fat's in the skin, most of it. So get the skin off the chicken, trim off the fat from the edges, and then cook it like that. So I always say, cook it lean, okay? Don't cook it with the fat on it. Cook it lean, and cook it in the leanest way you can. So probably the leanest version will be to steam your chicken, but not everybody can steam it or as a steamer. But then you could grill it. That's another great way of cooking it. You could even bake it, just don't smother it in oil, because that's putting it back in. And you could even, pan fry it. And another little easy top tip is, buying spray oil, because it just controls the amount you use. And most spray oils will be made, because it's a liquid, will be made out of vegetable oil. So you're usually okay with that. Like you can get a rapeseed version, olive oil, whatever else they're using out there. But sunflower oil, that's the one they normally use, isn't it? But my preference, and this is just a preference, okay? I've got a reason behind it, but the rapeseed oil is my preference. Even though it's got the worst name in the world for an oil, it's one of my favorite ones because it has a good high cooking point, okay? Olive oil notoriously got a low cooking point, so it's not good for like cooking things at a high temperature, So like you put it in a pan, it's really quite hot.
Yeah, no, olive oil is more for dressings, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really, rather than to cook with.
Yeah, but everybody cooks with it because they know it's good. But when you get to a high temperature, it starts losing its properties, and you've got a risk of it being like a bit more like a trans fat then, so it's still going to be dangerous. So stuff like rapeseed oil is a great cooking point. So controlling the amount of fats you put on your food is already a straight away thing. Cooking things lean, buying your meat as lean as you can. So if you like your beef and you want mince for a spaghetti, buy the 95% lean one, 5% fat. And another tip, just simple things, is like once you've cooked your meat, take it out and drain the fat away before you cook any veg, because any fat that's come out of it, even if there's only a little bit, because it's on the 5% fat one, your vegetables are just like sponges and they'll just soak it all up. So the thing that you put in there that's going to be the healthiest part of it, your veg, is now going to be probably the unhealthiest part of it, because it's just like little fat sponges. That's why, there's a big thing about not deep frying your foods, because they just absorb it all. Deep fried chips, even though they might taste the most amazing, they're just, for me, they're just fat sponges, and that's how I see them as now. There's fat sponges. And one of the things that works for me, that helps me keep me on the straight and narrow, is remembering what's actually in there and what's going into it. Yeah. It's when I start thinking, no, it's just that. I'm sure it's not that bad. It looks all right, tastes good. It's like, no, just remember what's really in it, And this was once a potato, which has some good stuff in it, That's not potatoes. They're still good for us. We just don't want that many. But then if you fill them and soak them in fat, then they're not really potatoes anymore. Your chip is now a fat stick, okay? And image that however you want to image it, okay? Have it look at a big lump of fat coming in. Like those horrible adverts that they do for cigarette packets and stuff. They used to have one, didn't they, where it had like a cigarette peeled inside it, which is like fat. So that's what it does. I'm like, yes, it's a good image. It puts you off eating that stuff. So sort of top tips would be, cut down the saturated fat whatever you can, trim it off, cook it lean, and cook it in the leanest way you can, okay? Stay away from the deep fat fryer. It's a nightmare. It's just going to cause issues. And then also watch out for the sort of hidden saturated fats, which sort of lie in like cakes, biscuits, buns, in spreads. Watch spreads as well. Spreads is another one, It's like, here's a nice piece of wholemeal toast. I'm being good. Heart healthy wholemeal toast. What it says on the box. It's great. And then you slap a big lump of fat on it and it kind of goes downhill, So if you put a big lump of butter on that, it's going to have a lot of saturated fat and it's going to be like twice as much calories because it doesn't take a lot. It's very high in calories fat. So bring those down. Watch the cakes, watch the biscuits, watch the creamy puddings. They're all so full of fat, creamy sauces. It's getting away from stuff like that. That really helps. Obviously cheese is a big one and people love cheese. Although I've been promoting, and I know you're not supposed to promote things, but the eat lean cheese I've banged on about a little bit because I think it's a really great alternative. But it's still made from milk, from dairy, and it's just that they extracted the fat, really made it out of the protein from the dairy. It tastes really nice. But for the first time I think I've ever seen it, it's actually got a green traffic light signal for the saturated fat on cheese. And it's like,
yeah, you don't normally see that on cheese.
It was like, blow me over. I can have cheese again now. I'm enjoying it. It's like, I guess I will have a bit of cheese on my spaghetti today. Whereas before I'm normally like, I'm not bothered, I'll leave it. But again, it's like, you still don't want to go crazy with it. And the second thing is make sure you've got a nice supply of the unsaturated oils, okay? Because they do help out, but get them in the better versions. Like have an oily fish, have some salmon or some mackerel, whatever. There's loads of them out there. Tuna, if it's fresh tuna. Tin tuna don't count because tin tuna doesn't have the oils in it anymore. It gets stripped for tinning it. Still a good protein source, but it's not a good omega source, if you like. So get those healthy fish in. A bit of avocado, olives themselves on the road. They're all really, really good sources. Nuts, nuts, if they're unsalted and stuff and unroasted, they're a really good source, and a lot of the seeds are. And those fats are really good because when you think about the unsaturated fats you get from them, they actually kind of help clear out the system a little bit. I always imagine them like when we went back to that artery again that were blocked up. Imagine them coming in like a little wheelbarrow coming down and scooping some out and then taking it away and getting rid of it. A little bit by a little bit, it helps clear out the system. And funnily enough, it does the same for the diabetes risk. It actually makes that relationship between the muscle and insulin get better. I don't think anybody really knows exactly how it does it, but it does it. And my wheelbarrow is enough for me to understand how it works, okay? Comes around, takes it away and makes it a little bit better. Over time, it's going to help improve that heart health. So that's what changed my cholesterol around. And I think on my last check, actually, on my check when I turned 40, and you've got to go in for it feels bad, and your 40 check is like, I'm over the hill check, is it? Go for your first check at 40.
Wellness man check, isn't it? That's what it's called.
Yes, that's a nice version of calling it. I call it am I finally getting old? But that check then, and this is, me living this lifestyle now, my cholesterol level, my overall cholesterol was still a little bit high, but only because of my unsaturated levels. So my HDL, what I come from moving the unsaturated fats, the HDL, the good stuff, was high, but in a good proportion. So like it was spot on really. It was quite nice because I sat down with the nurse and she was like, well, everything's just pretty much perfect. It's like, oh, well, that's a good thing to hear because it wasn't before. It was pretty much horrible. And it was looking like this. And I think they give you your 10-year percentage that they are in heart disease risk, and mine came out at 0.2%. I think that was pretty okay. I felt quite comfortable with that. For the next 10 years, I've only got a 0.2% chance of heart disease. I thought that sounds good.
It must be satisfying seeing, your own progress in having that high cholesterol to it not being an issue now. The fact that what you've been doing has been working.
Yeah, and I see that in lots of people you work. It's like, go and get your checkups, go and get an extra test. I'd love to be able to provide that directly to clients. Because I can, I do know how to take the test stuff, but it's really expensive if you're only doing it like every now and again. If you're doing it en masse, it's not so bad. You can do it, but it's a great thing to see. But obviously, they can go to the doctor's surgery and get that done, their health centres, and get another checkup and then see how it's going. Even if it's just on an annual one, and they just make sure they get told the results. And that's one thing I'd always recommend, because sometimes you'll go to your annual checkups and they'll get things. They'll say, "Oh yeah, everything's fine," and that's all they tell you. And I think that's enough, but for me, as you can probably already know, I like to know everything. So I'm like, okay, yeah, but can you tell me what the answers are? What came out? What were the numbers? And because I understand the numbers, I'm like, I know how far away I am. It's okay, say it's okay. But say if that was a blood sugar test, like a HbA1c, which is looking at the overall blood sugar. And I said, oh, it's fine. But then they told me the number was like 40 or 41. I thought, well, that's only a couple of points of being classed as pre-diabetic, So I'm like, that would concern me. I think it's creeping up. So I'm like, we'll tell them what it is. And it's like, well, it was about 31, I think. So it was actually really, really good. And same with the cholesterol level. I'm like, well, I know what my overall is, but what's my separate ones? Because obviously I want to keep those LDLs, keep me low density ones low, my high ones high. And, things are going in the right fashion. So, I want those numbers. So then I can jump in on that and say, yeah, that feels good. And I tell them, so ask them for your numbers. I need to explain to them. I will explain to you.
Yeah, I mean, the cholesterol one, it's just a finger prick test anyway, isn't it? It's a really simple test. Yeah. It's nothing more scary than that. And it probably is a good number for people to know. Just, you can't see from the outside what your cholesterol is. You've no idea. And
same as like your blood pressure.
I'll honestly admit, I've had a cholesterol test and mine was higher than it should have been. So, just making small changes can stop it from getting worse.
And what I love about, hearing stuff like that though as well, is Kate, because if somebody looked at you, Kate, they would think, how on earth could yours be a bit up, because, you're slim, you're looking good health, you're young, and people would be surprised about it, wouldn't they? But this is something else that I always look for as well when I talk about client health. And I'm like, yeah, but it's okay if you've been, some people, I met people who are okay, like I've seen some people eat some stuff and I think like, how are you eating all that? And yet you can't tell from the outside. And sometimes you can't always see things from the outside. So you're right, that hidden inner part, that inner health needs to be looked at, because in the industry, we always call it stuff like skinny fat and stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, I look good, but there's some stuff inside that would be represent something that should be more overweight. And what that message is like, just anyone who's out there, those things like, oh, well, I think I'm fine because I look okay. It's like, still get your checks, because you may find there's something hidden away in there. You may just be lucky that you don't store loads of it and you've got a high metabolism, so you can't see it from the outside. And maybe you're more at a disadvantage because you don't know, because you've got nothing to warn you. And I see that in diabetic groups as well. When I work with pre-diabetic, should I say, I get, because people will say diabetes, what's the big thing? Overweight, okay? Same as they'll say with heart disease, won't they? Oh, it's weight. Everybody jumps to weight straight away. But if I go to a group of that and I go to a group of, let's say, 20 people, there'll be at least 4, maybe 5, who we look at either normal or even underweight, and they can't understand why on earth they're there. You know what I mean? Why am I here? And that's just because bodies will work very, very differently. So it's the same in all health, isn't it? But they've had a checkup and it's found this high blood sugar in that case, or I might find a high cholesterol, like you said in yours, and it's like, yeah, you don't get it. And sometimes even, like say, when the weight's building up, you don't always notice it yourself. I know I certainly did. I'll tell you a funny story. And it was like, it caught me out. And this is when I think it was after my eyes were opened, and then I realised, and I started being more observant. And I was walking down towards the office one day when I was still in housing, and I had like one of those over the top sort of raincoats that you see, like the warm up, and it was Halifax rugby one. So it was like, when they put it over the top and it sort of opened at the bottom, and it was bad day, raining and windy, and I thought, God, look at that, blow my top up like this, and my top's all up here. So I was like, oh, and I went, oh, that's not the wind, that's my gut. Where did that come from? I never saw that sneak up on me. And it was just like, it was one of those funny moments. I'm like, oh, now my eyes are open, I'm actually seeing things, that I need to change, At that point, I'd probably never noticed it before, but because I thought, yeah, that's blown up. And then I'm like, actually, it's me.
Yeah, realisation.
Yeah, realisation. So it's like, again, don't judge a book by its cover business, as all comes in, isn't it? And do that for yourself, get your health checks and see where you're at, and it's worthwhile doing. Even simple things, from having your blood pressure checked and your heart rate checked, could give you some pointers and indicators that things might need a further check. And they're very simple to get done. And you can walk into most health centres and you can grab one where you stick your arm in, don't you? It does it for you, like, well, looks like a crazy futuristic device that's going to chew your arm off or something, but it just gives you a blood pressure reading. And even that can give you a small indicator into what's happening, so to do that, and then start looking at what you need to make, what simple changes, and make them easy, make them small, then make them.
Don't overwhelm yourself.
Don't overwhelm yourself, no. And just think about that longer term goal. Never think about, I must be here to here, and that's like 2 weeks away, 2 months away even. Think about, I'm here and I want to be up here. That might be a year away. And that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's more about that if you establish as you go along now, longer term habits and new behaviors is where you will stop the whole yo-yo thing we mentioned at the beginning. Because the yo-yo thing happens because we go on all these crazy fad diets that are out there. And no, people say they don't like to knock them, but I do. I don't care. I think they only work for so long, and I've seen so many people drop so much, get everything right, and then boom, they're back. And you just don't need that. You just don't need that. It's not good for your motivation. It's not good for your health. Steady, long-term changes that are for good. And if you have blips during your changes, make them just the blips, okay? And don't make them a punishment. Don't make them like, oh God, I've slipped up this weekend now because I went out with my friends all weekend. Does it matter? Did you enjoy yourself? Did you have fun? Yeah, I did. Okay, right. It's Monday. We're back. Let's keep with it now, okay? And let's keep that blip away for a few more weeks, okay? And it's more like that. It's not about not going out there and still having some fun and doing that. It's about that not becoming the everyday. If I look at my growing up life and probably in a lot of my adult life at the beginning, having a bun after every meal or something sweet after a meal, lunch and tea, was just normal. Having a snack in between it, like, are you in the shop? Oh yeah, grab us a Yorkie bar while you're there. I'll have one of those because I fancy that. And your colleagues around you that say, oh, do you want some of this? There's your tea, 2 sugars every time, and if you're in an office environment, which was for quite a few years, that's about 10 cups of tea a day, isn't it? I think they just keep coming, so it's making those changes, little changes like that, taking the sugar out of my tea, easy win, do that, never go back on that one, and it's those little changes that will stick with you bit by bit. But if you do them all in one go, you can pretty much guarantee you'll go back. You're one of the lucky few if you don't. One of the very lucky few.
Nick, you've just joined your gym again, haven't you?
On the spot there, Nick. How you doing?
Yeah. My daughters wanted to go when they reopened gyms, and they used to be big into sport. I mean, my youngest was a exceptional. Well, she could have qualified for the Welsh breaststroke trials. She was a good swimmer, but she stopped it because it was just I mean, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, bang, bang, bang. So she needed she's always been quite fit and needed a way of she's only 15, but needed a way of being locked down, and I wasn't keen on her going out running, and when it was at its height in April, May. So we've got a treadmill. I don't know where that is, by the way, but she does. And the other one, my eldest daughter also wanted to go to the gym. So I've got a friend who used to be who's still a personal trainer, really good guy, owns a biggest gym near Burnley, and they went to that, did a couple of PT sessions to get to learn how to use the equipment properly again. And because my daughter's 15, she can't go in by herself, so I sit there, doing my work, and I feel like a right turkey, because I'm on a constant diet all the time, and I was relating to your sort of the trigger stuff that you were talking about then. So I'm going to be back at it properly when I'm back. We go back in the office, which is very, very soon, not next week, but the week after.
Excellent.
And starting the winter using my bike on the turbo trainer with Zwift, and not doing anything hard, just getting on it and pedaling for half an hour.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tour de Lancashire, and these triggers are really key, because you're quite right. If you try and do them all at once, it's very, very difficult to maintain that, all of them, even just one of them.
Yeah.
So I'm lucky. I've never had. I'm not a chocolate fan. I know where my problem is. It's portion size. So I absolutely. I don't eat unhealthily at all. I eat healthily. I may have, I quite like ice cream, but that's maybe twice a week if I have that. And I try and do something about that, which is, so I don't drink. I don't have sugar. We don't have any. Sugar in the house is like used for baking for the kids, basically.
Yeah.
We don't use it. We never have done. I never have done. We've been on skim. I mean, the red top milk since I can remember in the 80s when it first came out. There's a blue top milk. So, and ready meals and things like that. So, but my problem is portion control, and so the way I try and counteract that is, even in real like broccoli and things like that, I'm still conscious of it. So I try to reduce the plate sizes, and try and reduce the containers I'm putting stuff in. So instead of having a bowl that contains quite a bit of space, so you can fill it up with 3 Weetabix instead of 2. I'm not saying Weetabix is bad, but it's still quite carby. Use a little thing about about half the size, and then fill that not to the top but half, and then put the milk in. And do you know what I mean? Just thinking like that.
Good ways of thinking about it. I mean, that straight away brings up things. I mean, it's like, the fact that you're saying you're aware that portion size is one of your downfalls is really good, because I mean, the awareness is one of the first things. It's one of the first things you've got to get right. You've got to tune in and actually see what you're doing. And that's where people fall flat a lot, is that they just don't see what's going on. And I've been there myself, obviously, so I wouldn't have had those issues I had before. But starting to track what you eat, starting to track your activity, you could even track your weight if you want. I'm not a massive fan of it, but I'd rather track how's my clothes fitting. How do I look in the mirror? Maybe take a picture now and then a picture in a month later. Do I look like I reduced my body fat? Because if you start exercising and you get a bit more muscle, your weight might not move as much. It might move slowly.
interestingly, when I had a PT for 3 years, I was a lot fitter, no question about that. And strength-wise, I was really strong. But I'm quite a strong frame anyway. But I didn't actually lose a lot of weight. But what I did do was it all started to tighten up, and there was never any, that was key. So, weight isn't everything.
No, it's not. It's the reason why it's used so much is because it's an easy stat to get really quickly. Get something on the step of scales takes 2 minutes, and we can do that wherever we are. So it's a really easy figure to use. But when it comes down to it, it's not weight loss. Like I said a bit earlier on in this talk, it's body fat, and that's when reduced. We know it's the body fat that sits around us that causes the problems, and the rest of it must be about just your overall health, your fitness levels. That like you're feeling good, you're stronger, you're more capable. It's like when we do the Wellness Wednesdays. I said Wednesday workouts. Still, it's the same thing. Isn't it? The Wellness Wednesdays is a lot of stuff is focused around functional activity, so that you maintain doing what you do in your normal life. That's just really important, because you don't want to become the one that's stuck in a chair, not able to do things for themselves, because it becomes quite sad. It can become quite depressing. So if you can maintain exercises in that movement pattern, like even just like I say, just simply getting in and out of a chair, you can still do things for yourself, and you still have that independence. And I don't think there's anybody out there who'd say like, oh, well, I'm not bothered, I'll just let everybody do it for me. People want their independence. They don't like to not be doing it. And sometimes people even tell people that they can't do things because they're embarrassed by it. And which is a bit, it's a little bit silly, but I understand pride and stuff that people get. But it's like, yeah, keep yourself able then by doing these simple things. One of my
society pressures.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you one of my favorite things that I had in one of my, this was from a diabetes group. And there was a chap in one of them groups that came. He was 82 and walked in with a stick, struggled to walk in with his stick. We used to have to do a weigh in at the beginning of these groups, and struggled to get onto the scales. Always be a tough challenge. Then you sit down all carefully. But talk about spirit, lovely, lovely guy. And we focused on lots of stuff with the group, and he really took the exercise thing quite well. So he went and joined a simple chair exercise group, and he joined like a Pilates group for, I think they might call it Pilates group from the elderly. I never like from the elderly, so sometimes a bit insulting. But towards the end, I think it was like the penultimate session, he was saying I said, oh, how's your classes been going? And he had this big grin on his face, and he passed his stick over to the person next to him, and then just went, you ready? Hands in the air, and he went, then sat back down, and he went, I've not done that for 20 years without any help. And he went, I'm like, that's amazing. And if you could have seen his face, I wish you could see it. I wish I could have a picture of his face to show you. It was like the delight and wonder on his face, and how happy he was with himself. Just like the fact he can now get back up. And that's starting to exercise again at just over 80 years old. And within 6 months, he'd enabled himself to start getting out of the chair independently, where he couldn't before. He had to be hoisted out, pulled out by somebody, clamber up something, put his stick down, just stood up and sat back down again. And he could stay standing. And that's the things, I love those things more than anything. But it's like, that is the biggest difference he's made to his life out of this whole thing. Yeah, he might have turned around his diabetes risk in this group, but that's not what's important to him. It's that was. And that little thing there, it is brilliant. And that's what you look for, because what's important to you? What do you want to achieve out of this? What's going to make you have that sparkle in your eyes where you feel really proud of yourself and good about yourself? And that's a good thing to look for too.
I always remember when I did, so I tried the gym and all that, and I did PT. And I struggled to stand up without putting my hands on my knees off the end of a bench, just to do because of the heart failure. And that was, so we used to do like 10 reps, 4 sets without any weights. By the time I left, which was unfortunate because it was just work pressures. And all right, Paul, the guy, used to say, book it in as a meeting. Yeah, but Paul, I've got to get changed. I can't do it in my suit, can I? So there was all that sort of half an hour pre, and then half an hour to an hour afterwards, driving there and back and all that. So it was, but by the time I finished, I could do 25 kilo, hold a 25 kilo kettlebell,
yeah,
and do 12 reps, 4 sets, and that was my easiest. Yeah,
and I respect that feel. Yeah,
and that, you know, is embedded here of what you can do, and that became my easiest exercise.
Yeah, there you go.
So little wins are really important. I always talk about, I suppose it's a little bit about myself, but little wins in self-management are everything because people can then get attuned to how they achieve, how they win at other things. They learn how to do it once, they'll do it again in something else. And that bloke who, the 80-odd-year-old bloke who said, look at me, I'm going to stand up unaided, bang, I've done it, and go, and I'm going to do it, other stuff in my life that's gonna mirror that.
That's it, innit? Yeah. Looks like a small win to a lot of people, but a massive win in his hat. And you're totally reading from my same Bible where we talk about celebrating your wins. I'm big on that. Every win counts, okay? Every win is so essentially good. No matter how small you may think it seems, celebrate it like it's something fantastic, because it is. And you get that mentality. It'll help. Your brain will look for that success. It'll think, oh, I like how that feels. And it'll want it again. And then you'll want to look for it because, you know, let's face it, your brain is you. That's what controls you. That's who you are. Without that doing its job, and you know, we're not doing what we're doing now. We're not talking and laughing and got these thoughts going off in his heads. So, you know, celebrate those wins like Nick says, and you know, take them with you, because that's how you propel yourself forward. And all those wins, even if they're the small ones, they all add up to one big win in the end.
Yeah, and it goes back to, again, don't compare yourself. Your wins are your wins, no matter how little they are to other people. If it's something you want to achieve, it is so important. It's more important than you can realise to not compare and just set your own goals, however small.
And this is a life piece. I mean, people say to me, you know, when you run the charity, you know, why do you do it? Well, because I was affected. Wasn't it like some rehab for you, really? Well, probably was, actually, because there were massive gaps in the market where there wasn't any support for people with heart failure. And I can categorically guarantee you that in 2010, there was nothing. There were books, but there wasn't an active. So what spurs me on in the charity is seeing one person get some benefit from what we do. That is it. If that's all we get, that is it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And definitely. I think trying and constantly focusing and having I always remember I went to this conference in Manchester 2013, 2012 maybe, and I was invited by what was then the Heart Failure Specialist Nurse Network, and I got massive respect for heart failure nurses. But there was this one nurse she worked in a prominent hospital in Manchester. She doesn't work there. She's retired now. And she stood up and went, "You're completely obsessed." But you know what? Sometimes just to get that level of focus, you have to be pretty laser on it. And the challenge of living with heart failure, and you know, there's wins in exercise and movement and nutrition and friendships and self-purpose and who you are and how the heart really shouldn't define you. But, you know, people have to realize that, and they deal with it in all their own different ways. So, you know, I'm sorry for being late. But this session is sort of the sort of thing that we should be talking about, which is an open session about, you know, helping yourself. It's your health. It's nobody else's health. And it's your responsibility. And I think we live in a society, I'm going to get shot now, but I think we live in a society where we sort of expect to be, you know, what's the NHS thing? Cradle to grave?
Yeah.
Well, I want to try and extend the grave slope. Yeah. I want to try and level it a bit. So, and sometimes genetically, you know, you have a predisposition anyway. You can go and get tests and they'll tell you whether you're more prone to cancer or you're more prone to maybe cardiovascular. But you know, sometimes, I mean, it's difficult. Knowledge is important. For me, this is all about percentages. because you've got different types of people who have, if you have a look at, the way I relate it is, if you have a look at work, so there are ones that there are the vast majority of people. So we've got A, B, C, D patients. Okay, so the A patients are the ones that are like, entrepreneur. Doesn't mean that you're any better being an entrepreneur, by the way, but are a bit more risk takers, a bit more like get out there and are willing to try loads of stuff. And then you got the people who are the Bs, who are like the people who are pretty sort of get in there and they'll see the entrepreneur type sort of A's, more risky patients going, right, well, if it works for them, then I'm going to give it a go. But the vast majority of people sit in the C, which is the late adopter of new stuff. And that's where the challenge is, in the C's. And the D's are the people who say, it's just going to happen to me. That's the way I'm going. And I'm just going to smoke fags, drink beer, and eat loads of stuff and not move. Do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
But you see that in life. These are the people who start businesses. Doesn't mean they're any better. It's just who they are. And then you've got the B's who see, and they're the people who tag along with the people who start their businesses. And then the C's are the workforce.
Yeah.
And the workforce doesn't mean that you're any worse or any better than an A or a B or whatever. It's just who you are. It's just who you are.
There's nothing wrong with that, is there? There's nothing wrong at all with being who you are. It's understanding you and then taking responsibility. And what you said earlier on about saying like, it's down to the individual to take responsibility for their health and stuff. And it is, and we always find that hard to say because we have got a little bit of a nanny state going on, haven't we, sometimes, where it feels like everybody should be fixing it for me. I mean, you see it come out on social media, you see people doing it, it's like, oh, why haven't they done that? I mean, I worked in, obviously, when I was in housing, I was in support housing and with like a lot of homeless and stuff like that. But just even from that angle of even people saying, oh, well, I haven't been paid yet, they went, well, what did you do to get paid? Well, I haven't got my job seekers allowance yet. I went, well, you haven't worked to get paid, have you? You've been given a benefit to help you along. That's a little bonus treat for you so you don't starve and that you can afford some food and clothing while you find yourself some work. But it's often seen as, oh no, and the amount of people that would come and expect it and say, oh, they haven't paid me, I need to kick off, why haven't they paid me? It's like, it's not really something that you're completely entitled to as in a right, is it? It's something that you've got to jump through a couple of hoops. Did you go and sign on? Oh no, well, I couldn't be bothered. Well, how can you expect if you can't even turn up to an appointment and sign a book? Talk about careers.
It should be there to protect the most vulnerable who can't work, not necessarily the people who don't want to work.
It's a parachute for those who are vulnerable.
Yeah. And instead, it's people who take advantage of it, like what we're saying. But like, even relating that down into the health things, it's the same thing. Get the knowledge. That was such an important thing to say because it's get the knowledge, and that's what people like. That's what this charity set up for. It's to inform people, let them know, bring them together, let them find the information. It's what I do in my role. My clients' success is not my success; it's their success, and completely 100% their success. My role in their journey is to educate and tell them how they can sort it out and guide them back on that route and motivate, of course, obviously, get them pepped up and keep them on track. And that's fine. But all along, I'm trying to put those skills to them so that becomes who they are. So then they can motivate themselves. They know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And then they can make that choice. And if they come back, 2 weeks later and they think, oh, I've lost some weight or I'm faster than what I wanted to be, where I was trying to be, I wanted to be quicker at this, running these 5Ks, and I've done it. That's because they put the hard work in outside of what I've done with them as well, and they've taken on board what I've done. If they haven't done it, it's normally because they've not done anything in between it. And you can't expect, a lot of people like to do once a week with PT. I mean, I have people that do more times a week, but most people like to do once a week. You can't do once a week and expect it to change everything, if you're not going to do the things that fill the gaps. So that onus on yourself to take responsibility and look after you and invest in you. It's so important that you look after you and you realize that. And when you've gone down like heart failure or, you've had like a few warning signs for your doctor, or like I did with the scheme that I went on, it's a bit of a wake-up call. But if that was there sooner, that education, I probably would never have got there, if I could realize that and see it. But you don't, and I think that's what this is a great thing to do, because it's putting that out there and making people, so yeah, gosh, so if I keep doing that, this is what could happen and this is where I could go. But invest in you because you're important. You're important too, and there's people that you're very important too. And whatever you're doing damage yourself, others will be suffering from it as well. And it's like, people talk like, and they go eating out, and I'm always like saying, oh yeah, but I paid for this now, so I need to finish it off. You don't. You've paid for it. So if you're going to eat it, all you're going to do is get rid of it. So what's it matter if there's a little bit left that has to get thrown away? It doesn't matter at all. Stop worrying about that bank and worry about this one, the health bank. I like the health bank. I talk about it a lot. Invest your time into here, okay, and look after it, and particularly what's inside it all, because you're going to live longer, you're going to feel better, you're going to do more, and your life's going to be more enjoyable. And quality of life is kind of one of the number one things you should aim for, because without it, life's just not as much fun, is it? And we've only got it once. Get one chance, don't waste it on daft things, go in there and find something that you like doing and have a good time. Life's still fun even when you're looking after yourself. I don't, because I've been strict with my health and I do all this stuff, I don't have no life. I love doing stuff, and I do all sorts of things. Doesn't stop me if I want to go out, and doesn't stop any of that sort of things. I just make different choices when I'm there. But do I have as much fun? I have more fun because I've learned to let go of all those inhibitions, and just be me and enjoy that, and don't really care. I could give you some examples, but they're probably not right for everybody. But yes, enough to have fun anyway. I'm not worried too much anymore. Not without any extra copious help. But yeah, you learn to relax and just be you.
Yeah.
I've got things to do.
No, so don't worry. We've gone on for over an hour, so I think it's probably a good time to bring it to an end. But as Nick touched on the fact that us providing these webinars, and if it helps just one person or a handful of people, that's why we do it. And there's a couple of people that I'd like to give a little mention to, because they do join in every week. So we have a lady called Sandra. She joins every single yoga session, and it's noticed that she's always there. She always joins in. And then we've got another lady, Fran, who bought some resistant bands as well to join in with the sessions. And it really, it really puts a smile on my face to see that, what we're doing, it is helping people. And what you're doing, what you're providing, Ryan, it's fantastic. And we, as a charity, we do thank you for providing these sessions. They are very well received. And it's been lovely to get to know you better today as well.
Well, whatever we can do to help, always trying to, and I want to. And like I say, I'm under that same scope as helping one person, or helping 10 or 100, doesn't matter. It all matters,
I think Kate and I will be over to
Leeds.
I think we'll be over to Leeds to come and see you.
Come to Leeds.
We're going to come, and I'll do an exercise session with you, because I feel bad that I sit and watch them and moderate them and don't actually join in. So I'll come and do it. But be kind.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that one then. We'll still make it a gentle one, shall we?
Yeah, definitely.
Followed by a hard one when you're off camera.
Is that mine, is it? That's the hard one.
Yeah, that's your one, Nick. You've been PT before, I haven't.
Beasted. All right, okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We've not got a session on Monday because it's Bank Holiday Monday, but the book club and gardening will be back a week on Monday. So thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Phyllis. See you later.